thank you very much for joining us this morning. So my name's Stuart Munton from And Digital. So I'm going to be talking you through what we're going to be talking about in this session, which is the future of education, the fireside chat with myself and Harminder here. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to do a brief welcome. So this, me talking through kind of what we're doing, then we'll get into the discussion between me and Harminder about the future of education. There will be questions at the end. So if you want to add questions into the Q&A section, then we'll cover those through and we'll come on to those as we get to the end, and then we're going to close around 1 o'clock. So this is us. You can see us in the pictures, but this is so my name's Stuart Munton. I'm Chief for Delivery for And Digital and Scrum Half. So I look after practice evolution and digital. We're a tech consultancy. We are also one of the co-chairs of the EdTech X conference this week, and so therefore this is one of the kind of fringe events that kind of comes with this. And Harminder, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Harminder Matharu. I'm the Director of Government Partnerships here at FutureLearn, and more recently I've had enterprise added to my remit, which is really exciting. I joined FutureLearn in December 2020, just as lockdown kicked off, to head up government partnerships with the aim of developing new partnerships and also growing existing partnerships, strategic partnerships with government and the wider public sector and the not-for-profit sector. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's lovely for you to be here as well. So yeah, we're going to talk a lot about kind of the work that FutureLearn's been doing, and especially about the Future of Learning report, so and how that kind of brings a lot of this stuff to life. So a couple of bits of housekeeping. As we are coming into a webinar, you guys will be kept on mute and your video will be turned off. Let's just allow us to kind of have the conversation and focus. If you want to talk to each other, please use the chat. If you want to ask questions, please put them in the Q&A function. So in the Q&A function, we'll try and pick them up as we go through, or use them at the end as well. So as we go through. The event is being recorded, so this will be recorded and it'll be socialized. The video will be shared around to the participants. So we're at 38 participants at the moment. I think there were 90 something at the end of the sign up, but we'll send the video around to everybody at the end of this as well, so you can have that for reference. We do have a code of conduct, so And Digital is very keen to make sure that its community events are inclusive. So if you feel you've been ostracized, insulted in any way, please get in contact with us if you have any questions about the code of conduct. We have a full code of conduct online. It generally is quite long, but we've never had anyone complain at our social events and our community events. But again, we do take it seriously. So please be nice to each other in terms of comments and stuff, and then we'll talk through the event today. So that is us done for introduction. So we will go off from the slides, and it will just be basically me and Harminder having a chat about the future of education. So give me 2 seconds, let me stop sharing, and then that should just give it just us, which is good. So let's get into the questions then. So Harminder, welcome. So thank you so much for your time today. It's really great to kind of have someone with your background and experience kind of to talk this stuff through with. So first off, please tell us about the Future of Learning report. So why did FutureLearn kind of launch a new report on this kind of topic in 2022?
Yes, certainly. FutureLearn, our reason for being and our kind of mission is to transform access to education. So we believe that regardless of background, location, learners should be able to access learning from anywhere, anytime that suits them. So we felt it was really important to take a look at the potential that the expanding EdTech market really still holds, and what the learner of the future looks like. And so this research was conducted by Census-wide and includes 10 qualitative interviews with thought leaders in the education space as part of the research. We also cover the education motive attitudes and behaviours of 2,000 people who participated and more than 500 businesses based in the UK. And we made sure that the respondents were nationally representative on age, gender and region. So the report looks at the future of education, focusing on career choice, aspirations for the future, technology making a positive impact in learning and how that can be improved, and the impact that COVID has had on education overall. And the report also looks at key social topics such as diversity and inclusion, including gender, race and sexuality. And it's really centered around three main themes: around how people learn, post-pandemic learning, and skills that fit for the future.
Excellent. And we're going to talk through the report in a bit more detail, but for people who, if they want to go and find it, where would they go and find it at the moment?
If you go to FutureLearn.com, you will find the report, but if you just Google the future of learning, and that will pop up as well. It's the Future of Learning 2022. That will pop up as well, and I'm very happy to circulate a link.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's really good. So again, it's a really good report. So I came across it as we were starting to work and talk with FutureLearn, and the content is really interesting, which is kind of why we wanted to kind of have this discussion and talk it through. So let's dive into a little bit. So what are your thoughts at the moment on the education, EdTech, online learning sector now? So what are you seeing? What are the kind of trends, and what are the thoughts that you're having from it?
Yeah, I think there's real untapped potential in how we can better serve learners, educators and partners. Education is changing and online learning is growing. So in terms of the use of technology in the education sector, I think it's fair to say that we're all in agreement that this has been accelerated by the pandemic, and there's lots more technology can do to enhance the learning experience. I think experts expect to see more implementation of AI and machine learning in conjunction with learning analytics, for example, to recommend further courses based on a person's choice. I guess the simplest way of describing it is everyone's familiar with Netflix, so you have a particular interest and then you see things popping up. Just, based on your previous interaction with Netflix, try this, try that, you may like this. So more of that, and basically to adjust courses in real time based on learners' behaviour, augmented reality, and lots of possibilities with technology. So the report really did highlight that 20% of Brits who have taken an online course state they enjoy the flexibility it allows them to have, and online short courses are seen as the most accessible route to approach in order to develop skill sets while still in employment. And 30% of Brits chose this route to support them alongside their work. And at least a third of respondents chose to learn a new skill online in 2022. So that's really encouraging.
That's amazing stats though, aren't they? So it's like a third of people doing new skills and 30% doing online learning, which is great. And sort of slightly off flow, but like what would have happened without COVID? So would we have ended up in these sorts of numbers?
Possibly not. I think, the uptake would have still been steady because online has been around for a while. But I think the choice in a lot of ways was taken out of our hands. Just us as an EdTech company, but myself, my colleagues as learners as well. So I think even if you look at spaces like the apprenticeship side of things, apprenticeships are face-to-face, there's supported by online delivery, but it all came to a standstill, and there were measures put in place for learners to be able to continue in some fashion. 1 in 5 changed careers during the pandemic, and some of it was forced, but some of it would have been by choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting. I was chatting to someone last week about digital's growth. When we came into the pandemic, we were around about a headcount of about 900 people. We're about 1,500 people now. And I know we're not out of the pandemic, and I can't say those sorts of things, but it means we've had to onboard 900 people during the pandemic. And so therefore, and a lot of that has been using kind of online EdTech kind of technologies and platforms to kind of help people with their learning. So from us as a technology company, our people are wanting to learn, they're having to upskill themselves rapidly. So it's really, really important for us to get really good EdTech involved in the work we're doing. Excellent. Sorry.
I was just going to say, even in the hybrid working space, we all had to learn how to do that. So, you know, there are many books and courses that have been created online for people to support people to get to grips with, for example, what we're doing today, Zoom meetings. You know, pre-pandemic, was it a thing?
Exactly. And we sort of almost taken it for granted how we've got this kind of option now. So that kind of nicely kind of leads on to the kind of next question. So from a FutureLearn point of view and from your perspective, so what does the future of online learning look like? So how does the technology world change? How does this help us?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective that there's an absolute increased need for online learning. There's obviously with blended learning, which I think, you know, has been around for a while, that you know, it's here to stay. It's not, you know, served a need and then we're back to face. So the report itself highlighted that almost a fifth of the respondents prefer to learn through online short courses, little and often. And another 19% opt for a blended learning approach. So that's a mix of online, face-to-face. And, you know, what we're not saying is that there isn't a place for face-to-face. There absolutely is. And I think, as I mentioned, hybrid working, myself, my colleagues, we're all going back into the office now, and there's much to be gained from face-to-face interaction as well, where it adds value. So particularly people wanting to learn with there's sensitive subjects, whether it's around financial management or mental health. We found the report reported that people felt more comfortable using online methods based on their own personal experiences of a given subject. They just felt more comfortable learning in the comfort of their own home.
Okay, so that's really interesting because again, there's a certain amount of security in terms of those sensitive subjects. It's interesting talking today, because obviously today is an unusual day again. So there are no trains, there are no tubes. So anybody who is looking to go to a face-to-face meeting today in London is going to have a very difficult journey getting there. So again, I think sort of events like today also accelerate the need for online learning and online working. So yeah, so it's interesting sort of coming together of lots of these different things. So I'm interested in the kind of the stats and the statistics and the research you did about diversity and inclusion in the report. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, really important area. The report tells us that people from different generations, social and ethnic groups feel multiple barriers to learning are blocking the best education experiences, from, you know, course affordability to race issues, and experts see technology as a critical tool to turn around perceptions and deliver best-in-class learning. So some stats. Okay, so personal appearance can be an issue, and a third of respondents stated this. While race can often be an obstacle as well, and that again was 29% of respondents. So more than a quarter of respondents feel issues of gender identity could negatively impact people's learning experience, and with a similar total of around 25% also referencing sexuality. So in other areas, some women respondents, the top 3 issues women felt had a negative impact on a person's education were having a disability, their appearance, and socioeconomic background. You know, a staggering 41% of respondents that were women believe that equality and diversity training should be essential for all CEOs and business leaders. You know, it's not a thing that that should be done once. It's something that should be part of the kind of mandatory annual learning set. So that really came through in the report. And also in terms of diversity, you know, the face of education is changing. While most UK adults were taught by white cis men or women growing up, this is less so for younger generations. This generational divide is also seen when looking at who people would have liked to have been taught by.
Interesting. Again, we're looking to obviously open up the market as much as possible and provide opportunities. Is that a role for the EdTech? Is that a role for industry? Is that a role for education? How does that kind of work as the triumvirate of those?
In my view, it's the role for everybody, and we all play different parts in that. So we need to, as EdTech and providers of education, we need to make sure that what we develop and put out there is representative of the diversity we want that we see amongst our learners. So when we talk to our partners, we ask them the questions. So the universities, the industry partners, government partners. If you haven't had a chance to look at a FutureLearn course, do experience one. You can do one for free. And what we try to make sure that all the videos and materials, visuals that we use reflect diversity on every level, as well as, you know, all the accessibility angles as well. With respect to employers, businesses, you know, it's really important that employers continuously review and reflect on the success of their approaches to DEI, but also keep an eye on it. As mentioned earlier, it's not you do it once and it's fit for life. It's an evolving area, and whether employers carry out surveys, employee surveys, you know, learning and development surveys to really understand what their workforce need and really build that learning into the offers that they find for their staff and workforce development more broadly.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting we say about doing a FutureLearn course. As in the first FutureLearn course that I did was for becoming a STEM ambassador. So basically the STEM ambassador program that I'm connected to, which is sort of southwest, run out of Winchester, runs its onboarding through FutureLearn, which is great. And it just allows it to be connected, and it allows a diverse group of people to connect onto that, rather than it being you have to go and see a person in Winchester type stuff. So it was great. It was a really, really good experience that I had through that course. Excellent. So tell me a bit more about how FutureLearn and its partners are what they're doing to drive this future of learning, the future of education.
So specifically FutureLearn, our partners are our major driving force. So they are the experts, they bring the content to the platform. We facilitate the how and the kind of social learning pedagogy in terms of how the content hangs together to ensure there's that fantastic user experience. So the value our partners bring to the platform and to our learners in terms of expert educators, academic excellence and strong industry brands, we collaborate really strongly to make sure that you know, the findings of the report, this is our second report by the way, so we took learning from the first report, and we'll do the same this time as well, and really to look at how we can continuously improve and enhance what's already on offer. So we work with 260 plus global partners, so they each bring their expertise both from a geographical viewpoint but also from a subject matter expertise. We listen to the partners, we listen to learners, we run regular surveys as well, and we really take on board the feedback and develop and enhance services. The other thing we do, we hold regular roundtables to consult with our education and industry partners and expert advisors to support work across priority portfolios. So we have about 6 portfolios that we focus on around healthcare, business and management, digital, teaching, and others, to discuss areas around emerging skills. Where are the content gaps? What kind of content do we need to go after to make sure that learners are finding what they need and businesses are also getting value in terms of what they're looking for. So one example, we held a sustainability roundtable to coincide with COP26 in November last year. And more recently, we held a second one to celebrate Earth Day. And what we did, we brought together thought leaders and expertise in those sectors to really bottom out and discuss where the gaps are. And then we set to work to identify the leading content providers in those areas and work with our existing partners if they're not already offering content in those areas. They will go to work to develop content in those areas. And also in terms of the report and supporting that whole user experience, we've recently launched our 5-year Stepping Up strategy, which is all around delivering a standout customer experience, delivering high quality, affordable education. We'll continue to offer breadth so that learners, they may want to opt for an introductory course in something, but then we have expert tracks, which are specialisms if an individual wants to, alongside their work, for example, become an expert in a given area. And then in terms of the unique social learning pedagogy that we develop our courses with, it underpins how all our courses hang together. We continue to invest in enhancements in our platform tools, enterprise and data capabilities.
So you kind of, because of the short courses and the credentials and the kind of longer term plans that you provide, you're in an interesting position to see the relationship between education and employers. So as our digital, we onboard people from lots of universities, people from coding boot camps, a variety of things. So how do you see that relationship between education and employers? So from your perspective.
Yeah, as mentioned, recently enterprise has been added to my remit. So we're seeing strong demand from B2B and enterprise for training, and we're kind of putting all the wheels in motion. And we see collaborations between industry and universities. So some of the micro-credentials and some of the expert tracks, they have industry endorsement and working alongside higher education institutes and education providers, accredited qualifications. Some of the courses are accredited, come to life on the platform, and they're really well received. So, you know, we're continuing to work with a growing community of industry partners, including global brands such as Accenture, KPMG, Samsung. We work with the Lego Foundation and really create impactful courses and industry recognized offers so that employers' needs are satisfied, but also when individuals are looking to reskill and upskill, they're actually gaining something that an industry will recognize.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of your view, to kind of what type of skills are we talking about in this? Kind of what kind of skills are the ones that you're seeing of high demand on your platform, high demand from user point of view? So what's getting people excited at the moment?
Yeah, I guess the data shows that overall people believe in ongoing training for all positions and have particular opinions on what training, for example, should take place in leadership positions. So the 5 types of training people really do look at is people management training, mental health awareness, equality and diversity, emotional intelligence at work. Overall, you know, mental health awareness training was the top answer for training that people of all positions receive. And then you get into the more technical areas around cyber awareness, cyber security, financial management is another, and I guess also developing skills in agile project management. So you'll have topics that will mean something to every business. You know, I kind of refer to that as the engine room, you know, business administration, things like that. Every business has a need for that. And then you get into the more specialist areas and skill and learning.
Absolutely. And I find it really interesting, the fact that there's the first sort of 5 answers from that list really were the kind of the soft skills. They were the mental health pieces, they were the inclusion pieces, which is really interesting because again, I come from a technology company, so we all think about kind of how do you learn JavaScript, how do you learn Python, how do you do those sorts of things. But it's really interesting that those are the things which people are crying out for from I say soft skills. It's a very debatable term, soft skills, hard skills, but those sort of behavioral things seem to be very, very important.
Absolutely. And if you look at areas that I've already mentioned, like sustainability, every business is charged with becoming more sustainable in the way they do things. One of our portfolios is the teaching portfolio. So we provide a lot of CPD for teaching staff. And, you know, how do teachers be more sustainable in the teaching environment? So yeah, those kind of industry agnostic subjects are very popular.
Okay, really interesting. So tell us a bit more about kind of what FutureLearn is doing between industry and employers, so to drive this forward. So because again, you've mentioned some big companies like Accenture and stuff. So tell us a little bit more about kind of what's happening in that space.
So when I guess if we look at areas like healthcare, we work across the public sector. So we work with the NHS and we work with the UK Health Security Agency, formerly Public Health England, to look at what does the public need to know about and how can we get the messaging out there. And again, COVID was, another great example, if I can say that, to really at speed get support to frontline healthcare workers around psychological first aid and how to support them through the difficult times that people were experiencing. Yeah. We work with, I mentioned Accenture, so all around digital skills, people who want to perhaps change careers and actually get into digital. So there are introductory courses around that. So again, that's working with industry to bring their expertise through the platform and reaching more learners. Various other, I guess, areas around when we're developing accredited qualifications like the micro-credentials, this is where industry comes into play. If there's a short, rather than doing a full degree, if there's a short qualification that's been endorsed by Google, for example, yeah, or AWS, that's going to be far more appealing and attractive to an individual to undertake and then go forth and find a career opportunity with those organisations or like organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a load of really, really good Google courses on AI. I mean, like even base introductions to AI, but then you realize the person who's actually presenting it is leading the course almost like it was from an inceptional point of view, so that's a really, really deep knowledge, but they're doing introduction courses to help people get into it. So I can exactly see how industry.
And I mentioned expert educators early on. So all of our courses will list who the educators, the experts who was involved in designing the course, and as you say, delivering the course and providing that support online through the medium of the FutureLearn platform.
And what do you, I mean, so I was reading so last week there was a digital paper that came out from the government. So what direction do you see from the government that is sort of shaping what we should be thinking about and what we should be learning?
I think really accessibility. So if we talk about digital, so there's still digital poverty out there. So what can we collectively do as a collective to ensure that digital learning is accessible by all? Yep. So I think that's something the government needs to think about more. I know they have invested and supported, but it's usually been a reaction to something, and I think there needs to be a real strategy around making sure that learning is accessible through these channels by all.
So how do we as either individuals as organizations know that we're growing the right skills, as in like how do we know that the thing that we are developing now is the thing that will actually be of value in the future?
I think it's through activities like the Future of Learning report. We went out to 2,000 people. It's hearing and listening from learners and businesses. So I think it's keeping our finger on the pulse to ensure that the right provision is being made available.
Yeah.
And we use insights. So we have a data and insights team, and again through feedback from our partners as well, which sets the direction in terms of what we're going to be bringing onto the platform. So yeah. Again, the portfolios that we have chosen to work with, it's not just let's work with these. The data supports there's a need.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important that regardless of what role we each play, it's really making informed decision making around what the sectors need, what individuals need, and I guess how do we know that we're kind of responding well? We conduct surveys, Net Promoter Score, for example, we're kind of higher than the UK average against our competitors, so we're really proud of that. So we know our learners are happy with the learning experience, and just making sure that the right amount of support is around them.
Okay, good. So in the industry, I mean, especially in the tech industry that I'm in, so we talk about the war for talent a lot, as in we're competing for similar sorts of individuals. What do you see? How does this war for talent, how does it affect education trends? How does what we're needing as industry affect education, and therefore obviously EdTech as well?
Yeah, I think this is where, when industry collaborates with education, there's a real power there. So, where the kind of tech, let's say, if we talk about Google's of the world, where they are collaborating, they're getting their stamp on qualifications and developing accredited skills experiences. So I think really it's around making sure that the learning is role relevant, industry relevant, because often undertaking learning in a given subject, if it doesn't speak to what a particular role that somebody might want to do, then they're not in the right place to think about applying for roles in that industry. So I think as industry and educators, it's important that collaboration continues, and we keep an eye on what the emerging skills are and actually develop the right provision to keep responding to those changing needs.
Absolutely. And again, it was interesting, one of the discussions we were having offline before this was around how do people come through online education, come through coding boot camps, and that's great because they're getting upskilled and they're learning, but actually the impactful thing is them moving into a tech job in our world, or into a role change. So again, I think it's we keep on talking and having these discussions, and it sounds like the kind of forums and the partnership groups that you're running to do exactly that kind of stuff as well.
I think it's a well-known fact now that the job for life doesn't exist. People are changing careers, not because it's forced to them, by choice. So it's really responding to that as well. Some interesting things going on. It's an exciting time.
Excellent. So thank you so much for answering my questions. We'll have a quick look into the Q&A. So those of you who are on, so thank you very much for your active comments in the chat. There are two questions which I'll read through from the Q&A. If you just give me a second, I'll drag it across into the other window. First one says, many professional bodies require continual professional development credits to get re-registration. Do you foresee it in the future there may be a push, e.g. by employers, to mandate expiry of education certification unless backed up by some form of continual learning?
I think there will always be roles, careers that require accreditation or continuous professional learning. So if you look at regulatory spaces like finance and health, you know, in the medical world, there will always be things. But I think things may change, but I think that's something that, again, we need to keep a close eye on. So the professional bodies, I mean, when I was working in the apprenticeship space, for example, a lot of apprenticeships were developed in the financial sector, and the professional accreditation really came into play there. So if you think about degree apprenticeships, there wasn't necessarily formal qualifications attached to them, but the professional accreditation really came into play there.
Okay, and the expiry bit's an interesting one. So from the industry that I'm in, so agile software engineering, there are two main groups that certify Scrum, which is an agile software engineering practice. One which is Scrum Alliance, where your certification expires, and one from Scrum.org, which it doesn't. And so it's interesting that the authoritative certifying bodies have different approaches to this. So one is for life, the other one is you have to come and keep doing continual professional development.
Yeah, I think there's something there that in those specific examples, and I think project management is another space, isn't it? If you think about they expire as well. I think that's something that those bodies will need to kind of monitor, really get perhaps the view of the industry, employers. If somebody's been employed by an organisation for 5 or more years and they haven't changed their role, you know, and they're an expert in what they're doing, what value does reaccreditation actually bring? So I think that's wider conversation across professional bodies and industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question. Question from Leadership for Innovation Mentor. You questioned people management training being in the top 5 interest zones. Would you share some of the trends, insights in regards to leadership training content and its quality, or simply your own thoughts on it? Thank you.
I think really good question. I think having worked across the private sector, let's say 50-50 split, and public sector, people management training, I've managed people for many years. Wherever you go, there's always some kind of training. And I think the success of it is really around how well engaged people are and how seriously they take it. And one could argue that if you're learning about managing people, how can you do it online? Well, online isn't the answer to everything. So one example, the leadership team that I'm in, we're all doing the same online course, which is a human leadership course. But we're all going to convene at some point in the future and have a workshop around it. So I think the success of how successful they are depends on how engaged people are. And there's a lot in terms of trends, emotional intelligence. So yes, this is how you manage people, but it's the what, but it's the how as well. So it's really ensuring that the kind of emotional intelligence aspects of managing people, working alongside people, really come into play.
Okay, yeah, good. That makes sense, because you can do some of it as in theoretical learning offline, and then you can come together to do the things. So it reminds me of a discussion I was having about school education, where they've sort of flipped classroom time and homework time around. So instead of sitting in quiet in the lessons answering questions, you're having discussion, you're doing stuff collaboratively, and then when you're offline at home, you're doing the stuff which when I was growing up, we probably would have sat in a math lesson writing the answers to maths questions. So excellent. Next question, is FutureLearn a charity?
We are not a charity, we're a private limited company. We do a lot of work with not-for-profits and charities, and I guess we work on projects that are around social good and social mobility. So we're a small organisation. I mean, you talked about growth earlier in the conversation. When I joined, there was a lot of growth taking place. So we're now around about 200 employees. So we're not a massive organisation, but when we work with charities, education organisations and foundations, we are very mindful in terms of, you know, how we operate with them commercially.
Okay, excellent. Next question, where do you see investment going in the education space? Content versus software, soft skills versus hard skills, etc., etc.
Oh, that's a difficult one. Investment, I guess all those areas need to be invested in proportionately. So if we don't invest in the technology, then the learner experience, you know, may not live up to what the learner expects. So I think it's really looking at, if we're talking about a particular organisation, it's really looking at where are you now, where is the investment needed. You could spend a lot of money developing more soft skills, more products, but if the learning experience isn't meeting the standards that a learner expects, then there's investment needed in whether it's, you know, the technology or course formats or anything like that. So I think investment is good, but not investment for investment's sake. It's really thinking about what's the feedback telling you, where do you need to place your efforts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm on Thursday at the EdTech conference. I'm meeting a couple of people to talk about VR and AR learning technologies, because I want to learn more about that kind of stuff, and it's interesting. But again, it's trying to work out how that fits in and how that gets to the point where it becomes mass and it becomes that versus actually really good content which I can consume now, versus having to wait several years to get to the thing that needs to be in that space. So interesting. Good. Next question. How can we know individuals and organizations are growing correct skills in their people?
Again, I think depending on the industry, it's what most organizations have their strategic objectives, why they exist, and they will have a good idea in terms of what kind of skills they need to bring in, what roles that they're recruiting into. So I think it's really important for businesses and sector leaders to have a handle on what are the skills of tomorrow that are needed within their sector area, and then really work with providers, whether that's, you know, face-to-face or whether that's online provision, to start plugging those gaps around what's needed. So, you know, most organizations will be running performance management and development of their staff. So what is that telling them? And at an individual level, if we were in the same organization, Stuart, my development needs would be different to yours. So it's really making sure that the L&D that's on offer to individuals meets their personal development needs, but as well as their competency level that's needed for them to deliver on their role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so for us as Land Digital, as in we have what are our skills of 2025? What are our skills of 2030? What do they look like for us as a technology organization? And how do we build and develop those? And so therefore we have that strategy. And again, as you say, very different to us, between us and a healthcare organization, as an example. So we've got to kind of know that and be able to drive that, and then come and say, here's our needs, I suppose.
And in terms of FutureLearn, what we offer on the platform, we're really around developing pathways. So we work with our HEI partners to, you know, their ultimate is a degree, but let's have a look at a degree, let's unpack it, and let's make short courses out of those degrees so that an individual can start at an introductory level and, you know, find out more about yourself and then build their learning. So we're kind of really keen to look at stackability as well, around qualifications. So, you know, rather than doing, you know, a 3-year full credit degree, what qualifications can actually build up to professional qualifications.
Cool, which nicely kind of ticks into the next question. So, which might be slightly contentious. Which areas of the government are most responsive to EdTech companies? Are there any Gov departments, individuals in Gov who chat to EdTech founders about what they're doing and how they can help?
Yes, well, absolutely they do. I mean, FutureLearn, we are one of the suppliers on, if I take UK Gov as an example, we're on the Civil Service Learning Framework. So amongst hundreds of other suppliers, and there are a mix of face-to-face suppliers, workshoppers, and EdTech companies. So yes, government absolutely does, and they use online learning, EdTech, for staff, civil service staff to undertake learning. They create their own courses on a platform, and they offer them out in closed cohorts to their community, the kind of groups within government departments. So right across the civil service, you know, EdTech is being used, and they're engaging really well.
Excellent. Yeah, so they're consuming it for themselves and therefore understanding the use of it for other services they need. Excellent. Next question. How can organizations involved in education best focus on the return on investment of their content?
Again, I think it goes back to the why.
Yep.
So why are you developing content A or B? Because there's a demand, and it's really ensuring that your customer that you're building it for is involved, you know, consulted, adequately consulted, so that what you're building is actually meeting their needs. If something's meeting their needs, then the return on investment speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, most organizations will, you know, they don't want to invest in training for training's sake. They want to know what's the return on their investment.
Exactly.
They're putting people onto course. So it goes hand in hand.
Okay, cool. And I think this is the final question. Google now provides $300 6-month career-ready certificates that they consider as a 3-year bachelor's degree accepted at 160 top US employers. 80% of students get jobs with a starting salary of over £50,000 a year. Would students still want to go to university for a degree in the future? How could we respond to this new trend?
Yeah, that's fascinating. And Google, I'm sure, would have consulted with many education providers to be able to publicly say our certificate gives you this. So I think it's really interesting because this is the changing world of education, and I mentioned earlier around creative ways that people engage with learning now. So, you know, I think in the report, I've definitely read it somewhere, the way the proportion of respondents who say that they would prefer to engage via a Google type, what's just been described, experience, than go to, you know, university to do a traditional degree. So it's definitely changing, and I think we need to respond to that. It's not to say that back to one size does not fit all. So about making sure that there is the option and choice, and different industries will also think differently as well. So for example, if you want to go into the medical world, then there are certain things you have to do. You have to go to university at the moment, and I mentioned apprenticeships as well. That changed a lot as well. I mean, once upon a time, you couldn't, you'd have to go to university to become an accountant. Now you can do that through an apprenticeship route. So I think it's really about responding to what's the changes that are taking place.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. So it also leads to this kind of discussion around sort of social mobility, global working. So someone to go to university in the US costs tens of thousands of dollars to go and do that. Whereas if they do a $300 course and they could be anywhere globally, it becomes much more cost effective, and therefore in a world where we can work remotely, it allows for a much wider diversity of tapping into great talent in literally almost whole continents, which are somewhat forgotten by traditional education.
Absolutely. And I think even if you look at degrees, I mean, if you think of education export, so we do work with, we've had many conversations with the Department for International Trade, and they have priority countries that they want the UK PLC to export to. If we make online degrees available internationally, a lot of people from various countries around the world would never have thought they could do a degree with let's say a top university in the UK. But if an online degree is made available, they can access it. So I've got my hands on some stats now. So 33% of people would select an online learning platform in order to learn new skills, and 22% would select accredited training from a brand or tech company like Google. Whereas only 28% would select a college and 21% would select university. So this does suggest, based on the report, that we're at a moment of transformation, and where non-traditional education providers are becoming popular. And actually, it's fair to say that our university partners are also weaving in digital a lot more in what they're offering, both in the online offer, but also in their face-to-face offer as well, to enable more flexibility.
Excellent. Yeah, and those stats are great, though, aren't they? Because like I can imagine 10 years ago, that was sort of everyone 90% into higher education versus any other option. So yeah, really, really interesting. So Harminder, thank you very much for answering all our questions. And we've gone through a lot of content, so it's really good. I think somewhere in the chat, the link to the report was posted, so people can go and have a look at that in their time. The video for this will be shared around to everybody. So finally, you can't hear anyone else, but I'll give you a round of applause. So thank you so much, Greg. It's very hard. It's just kind of me and you talking and stuff, and everyone else is sort of participating. So thank you so much for all your time this afternoon. For anyone else who would like to get involved in some of the discussion at the EdTech conference on Thursday, so I'm participating in a panel 12:35, which is the importance of upskilling the workforce. So I'm going to talk. I'm the kind of industry face in that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So one final question, which might be a quick one. What are the youngest age users who are currently using FutureLearn?
Okay, so we used to have learners as, I think, under 13 were not permitted, but that's now changed to 16 and upwards. And the only reason we have to be careful about age is because some of the content may not be appropriate for younger ages. So I think, but yeah, it's around about 16.
Excellent. So thank you once again, and for any of you who will be at the EdTech conference on Thursday, if you can actually get there. I'm going there tomorrow to get there for Thursday because of the train strike. I will see you there. So the session on Thursday is face-to-face. I'm assuming I'm sitting on the stage being answered questions. There's a question from Yvonne in the thing. So thanks you once again to Harminder, and thank you everybody else for attending. So we will close it there. Thank you very much.